Proving triangle congruence, SAS, or side angle side. Is triangle HOT congruent to triangle SUN? Side angle side postulate, or SAS postulate. If the two sides and an included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Example: if segment HO is congruent to segment SU and angle O is congruent to angle U and segment TO is congruent to segment NU, then triangle HOT is congruent to triangle SUN, according to SAS postulate, side angle side postulate. Remember that the angle here is the included angle. Now let's prove triangle congruence using two-column proof. Example 1. Given segment AC is congruent to segment UC, segment BC is congruent to segment DC, prove triangle ABC is congruent to triangle UDC. Let's put marks on the figure, then the statement and the corresponding reason. Segment AC is congruent to segment UC, given. In the figure, segment BD and segment AU form vertical angles. And remember that vertical angles are congruent. Our next statement is angle ACB is congruent to angle UCD, and the reason is vertical angles theorem. The third statement is segment BC is congruent to segment DC, and that is given. Now that we already have three corresponding parts congruent, two congruent sides and one included angle, then we can say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle UDC, and the reason is SAS postulate. Another example, number 2. Given segment JB is congruent to segment JY, segment JO bisects angle BJY, prove triangle JOB is congruent to triangle JOY. Let's put marks, then the statement and the reason. Segment JB is congruent to segment JY, given. Segment JO bisects angle BJY, given also. Since segment JO bisects angle BJY, then it divides the angle into two congruent parts. We have angle BJO is congruent to angle YJO, and the reason is definition of angle bisector. Note that the figure has a common side or a shared side, which is segment JO. Here we can say that segment JO is congruent to itself, or segment JO. That is reflexive property. Now we already have three corresponding parts congruent, two congruent sides and one included angle. Now we can say that triangle JOB is congruent to triangle JOY. And the reason is SAS postulate. Example number 3. Given segment HG and segment TD bisect each other at O, prove that triangle HOD is congruent to triangle GOT. Our first statement is segment HG and segment TD bisect each other at O. The reason is given. This implies that segment HO is congruent to segment GO and segment DO is congruent to segment TO. The reason is definition of segment bisector. But we're going to write first segment HO is congruent to segment GO. In the figure, segment HG and segment TD form vertical angles. This implies that angle HOD is congruent to angle GOT since vertical angles are congruent. And the reason is vertical angles theorem. Our fourth statement is based from the first statement. Segment DO is congruent to segment TO. The reason is definition of segment bisector. And since we already have three corresponding parts congruent, we can conclude that triangle HOD is congruent to triangle GOT. The reason is SAS postulate. That's all for now.